Warning disclaimer: this story is intended for mature audiences. It contains emotionally complex themes and romantic tension. Viewer discretion is advised. It started with the wind, not loud or wild, but soft, almost thoughtful. The kind of breeze that brushes your skin like memory. I remember standing on the balcony, my fingers tracing the cold iron rail, my heart heavier than I wanted to admit. The city lights below flickered like they knew secrets I didn't. And beside me, he stood quietly. Not too close, but not far enough to ignore. His name was Aiden. He wasn't my husband. But he looked at me like he saw something my husband hadn't in months, maybe even years. And across the hallway, just behind the curtains of the guest bedroom, my husband was pulling her closer. I didn't have to see it. I felt it. That kind of silence has a pulse. We all agreed to it. The rules were clear. A harmless swap. 2 couples, 1 weekend, no regrets. But rules are easier to write than to follow. Especially when hearts start misbehaving. I had known Aiden through my husband's work circles. He was charming in a careful way, like someone who once loved too much and decided to play it safe ever since. But tonight, there was a softness in his voice that said he was tired of safety. We hadn't touched. Not yet. He offered me a glass of wine, and I took it, our fingers grazing just enough to pretend it didn't mean anything. We watched the city together, saying nothing, letting our silence fill with questions we weren't brave enough to ask. Do you ever regret agreeing to this? I finally asked. He didn't answer right away. Just looked at me with eyes that knew how to listen. And then he stepped closer, not dramatically, just enough to feel the warmth of his breath against my cheek. He didn't touch me. He just stood there. I think, he whispered, some regrets are worth the story. And my body, still and unsure, betrayed the flicker of something I thought I'd buried. Desire, maybe. Or loneliness. Or both. Inside, I heard the faint creak of the guest room bed. A sound that made my heart twist, and my body lean just slightly toward Aiden. He noticed. Of course, he did. His hand hovered near my lower back, not touching, but waiting. Like he wanted my permission. Like he was giving me the chance to walk away. I didn't. Because in that moment, the balcony didn't feel like a boundary. It felt like a choice. And I hadn't made mine yet. He didn't move his hand. Still hovering. Still waiting. That quiet kind of waiting that feels louder than words. And I didn't breathe. Not out of fear. Out of the terrifying awareness that something was shifting. Not between us, not just yet, but inside me. Like a door slowly creaking open in a house I'd locked years ago. Aiden finally pulled back. Just an inch. Just enough to let the air return between us. I didn't come out here to make it harder, he said gently, his voice low, like it wasn't meant to carry. I just needed to breathe. I nodded. I understood. Because it wasn't just about them in that bedroom. It was about all the quiet compromises that came before tonight. The slow fade of eye contact at dinner. The touches that turned into habits. The way my husband, Ryan, started speaking to me like a teammate, efficient, dependable, but never like a lover. Not anymore. We had called it an experiment. Something to wake us up. As if intimacy were a switch we could flip. But no one warns you that once the door opens, it doesn't always swing the way you expect. I used to write, I heard myself say. Aiden turned to me. What did you write? Poems, I smiled softly, almost embarrassed. Love poems. Stupid ones. Full of metaphors about windows and rain and slow dancing in kitchens. He smiled too, not the kind people wear to be polite. This one reached his eyes. That's not stupid. I looked at him then, really looked, and realized he had that same kind of sadness I'd been hiding. Not loud. Just constant. Like background noise you only notice when it's suddenly gone. He stepped closer again. No contact. Just that slow magnetic pull that happens when two people stop pretending they're fine. Do you still write? He asked. I shook my head. No. I stopped when it stopped meaning something. He didn't say anything. He just stood beside me, quietly, like he wanted me to start again. Behind us, I heard laughter. My husband's voice, low and unfamiliar. I closed my eyes. Aiden looked toward the sound. Then back at me. And for a second, just a second, I wondered what it would feel like to be chosen again. To be seen not as a wife. Not as a woman shared. But as someone worth the risk. And I think, he was wondering the same thing. He didn't ask what I was thinking. He didn't have to. The silence between us had turned into something else, no longer empty, but charged, fragile, sacred. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to fill it, or stay suspended in it forever. Inside, their laughter faded into murmurs. The kind you either ignore, or memorize. I wrapped the robe tighter around myself. Not because I was cold, but because his gaze made me feel exposed. Not in the way men often look at women, but in the way someone studies a fading photograph, trying to remember the story behind the smile. He was looking at the version of me I used to be. Before the schedules. Before the silence. Before my husband and I decided it was easier to experiment than to be honest. You two were close once, weren't you? Aiden asked, his voice as gentle as the night air. I blinked slowly. We were best friends before we were lovers. He nodded, understanding something I hadn't even said. I think we confused safety for passion, I continued, barely above a whisper. We built a life with walls and windows, but forgot the fire. Aiden leaned on the balcony railing beside me, his body just close enough for his warmth to brush against my skin. I married young, he said. Too young to understand that love can't fix loneliness if it's not met halfway. I turned to him. Is that why you're here tonight? Trying to meet someone halfway? He exhaled, slow, thoughtful. I came thinking this would just be distraction. Novelty. But then I saw you across the room earlier, holding your wine glass like it was armor. I looked down, smiling faintly, despite the ache building inside me. And I thought, he added, maybe there's something beautiful about someone who still wants to be wanted. That sentence clung to me like a second skin. Because I didn't come into this weekend looking to fall. I came hoping to feel something, even if it was jealousy. Even if it was regret. Instead, I found someone who saw through the cracks I'd been hiding behind. And that terrified me more than anything happening in that bedroom. Behind us, the curtain shifted. Shadows moved. I think they're asleep, Aiden said softly. I didn't answer. Because part of me wanted to turn around. Go back. Pretend I didn't feel this pull towards someone I barely knew, yet who understood me in ways my husband no longer tried to. And another part of me stayed frozen in that moment. What does it mean to be loyal to someone who no longer sees you? And what does it cost to be honest with yourself when your heart is already elsewhere? The air was thick with things unsaid. And in the stillness, Aiden finally reached for my hand, not boldly, not possessively, just enough to let me pull away, if I wanted. But I didn't. Not yet. His fingers brushed mine. Barely. It was the kind of touch you'd miss if you weren't already waiting for it, the kind that didn't ask for permission but quietly hoped it was welcome. I should have pulled away. But instead, I let my hand rest there. Not fully open. Not fully closed. Just enough to say, I'm still deciding. The city below us pulsed with distant life, honking taxis, flickering signs, a world still moving while mine felt completely still. And in that stillness, I could feel everything I'd spent months trying not to. The ache of not being chosen. The guilt of wanting more than what I promised I'd settle for. The strange and aching warmth of being seen by someone who wasn't mine to be seen by. Aiden didn't push. He just stood beside me, hand near mine, gaze soft, breath steady, like he knew this moment wasn't about seduction. It was about permission. It was about honesty. I keep thinking, I whispered, if Ryan had reached for me the way you just did, maybe I wouldn't be out here. Aiden's eyes searched mine, and something cracked gently open in both of us. I think we both ended up outside, he said, because we were already halfway gone before tonight. The truth of that sank deep. Not cruel. Not dramatic. Just real, like the first moment after waking up, when the dream fades and the light hits you just right. I turned toward him fully now. No railing between us. Just breath. Just choice. He studied me like I was something delicate, not fragile, but sacred. The kind of thing you only touch if you're willing to feel everything that comes after. I'm scared, I admitted, barely audible. Me too, he said. But maybe scared is better than numb. The wind picked up again, curling between us like a question neither of us could yet answer. Inside, the soft creak of a door. Footsteps. We didn't move. Didn't flinch. Because the real line hadn't been crossed with bodies. It had been crossed the moment we stopped pretending we didn't care. And now, there was no going back. The door behind us opened. Not fully, just enough for the hallway light to slip through, catching the edge of the balcony like a silent spotlight. I turned toward it, breath caught somewhere between my ribs and my throat. But it wasn't Ryan. It was her. Kayla. Aiden's wife. She stood barefoot in the doorway, hair loose, one hand clutching the edge of her robe like she hadn't meant to interrupt, or maybe she had. Her eyes didn't go to him first. They went to me. And for a moment, nothing was said. The kind of moment that bends time, the kind where everything you've tried to suppress rises quietly to the surface. Her expression wasn't anger. It wasn't shock. It was something quieter. Sadder. As if she'd already known, and was only now letting herself look it in the eye. I couldn't sleep, she said finally, her voice soft. Aiden stepped back. Just slightly. As if her presence had broken some invisible tether between us. And maybe it had. But my eyes stayed locked with hers. Because the real twist wasn't her finding us. It was the way she looked at me, not like a rival, but like a mirror. I realized, in that moment, that Kayla was carrying the same ache I was. Not just tonight, but long before. She wasn't here to reclaim him. She was here because she, too, had been drifting. Watching her marriage unfold from a distance she didn't know how to close. "Do you love him?" she asked, not coldly. Not even accusingly. Just, honestly. I opened my mouth, but nothing came. Because I didn't have an answer yet. I wasn't sure this was love. Maybe it was recognition. Maybe it was two people catching each other mid-fall. Aiden stepped toward her, his voice careful. "Kayla," but she shook her head. "No. I'm not here to stop anything." Her eyes flicked back to me. "I just want to understand how we got here. All four of us." Her voice cracked a little on four. And suddenly the walls I'd built around my own guilt started to tremble. Because this wasn't just about Ryan. Or me. Or even Aiden. It was about the quiet unraveling of connection. The slow erosion of truth. The ways we all abandoned each other without ever walking out the door. Kayla turned to leave, but paused. We were supposed to feel something tonight. Maybe this is what feeling looks like. Then she slipped back inside, the door closing behind her with a whisper. The wind felt colder now. Aiden looked at me, eyes heavy with something that wasn't regret, but wasn't relief either. And I realized, whatever came next, the truth was no longer neat. No longer clean. It was real. And real is always complicated. The city was still humming below, unaware that something had broken open above it. Aiden leaned on the railing again, quieter now. Not distant, just stripped down. Like all the layers of performance had fallen away, and what remained was just him. I think she already knew, he said, watching the skyline like it could explain something. Before tonight. She knew we weren't coming back from this. I nodded, slowly, feeling the weight of it. Maybe we were all waiting for someone else to say it first. The silence between us wasn't the same as before. It wasn't loaded with desire or hesitation. It was tired. Honest. Raw. And for the first time since the beginning of this so-called experiment, I didn't feel like I was acting in my own life. I wasn't trying to prove something, or protect something, or pretend. I was just standing here. As me. I told Ryan I felt invisible, I said after a while. He said he felt like a ghost in his own marriage. Aiden turned to me. Do you still love him? The question should have shaken me. But it didn't. Because the truth had been knocking for months. Yes, I said. But not in the way he needs to be loved. And not in the way I used to. Aiden's shoulders dropped, just a little. Like that answer had unburdened him, too. I'm not asking for forever, he said quietly. I don't even know if there's a next. He paused, choosing the words with care. I wanted to know if this moment was real for you. Because it was for me. And that's when the final twist came, soft and unexpected. I smiled. Not out of joy. Not out of relief. But because I finally understood, this wasn't a love story. It was a reckoning. A night that peeled back everything false, until only the real parts remained. I think, I whispered, we were never meant to belong to each other. We were just meant to remind each other of who we are. And he nodded, eyes full, not with sadness, but with release. No kiss. No promise. No messy declarations. Just a quiet letting go. And when I turned to go back inside, alone, he didn't stop me. Because sometimes, the most intimate thing you can do for someone, is let them leave with their dignity intact. Morning came like a confession, slow, pale, and unavoidable. The city outside our window had quieted, softened by the weight of dawn. I stood barefoot in the kitchen, fingers curled around a cup of coffee I'd barely tasted. The apartment felt different now. Not because anything had changed in the furniture or the walls, but because something had shifted in me. Ryan came in quietly. No trace of the night left on him, except maybe in his eyes, those same tired eyes I once memorized like verses. We didn't speak at first. Not out of anger, but out of reverence for what we both now knew. The silence between us had always been filled with truths we were too afraid to say out loud. He reached for a mug, then paused. I heard the balcony door close, he said gently. I nodded. Yeah. Another pause. Not heavy. Just real. I didn't mean for it to go that far, he said. I looked at him. Neither did I. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't blame. It was just the kind of honesty that only comes after everything else has fallen away. We sat at the table, two people who had once built a life on dreams and dinner dates, now learning how to sit in the same room without armor. Do you think this was a mistake? He asked. I thought about it. Not just the night, or the swap, or the soft tension of the balcony. But everything leading up to it, the slow drift, the swallowed words, the nights spent side by side but oceans apart. No, I said. I think it was an answer we didn't know how to ask for. Across the hall, Kayla and Aiden packed their things. There were no slamming doors. No dramatic goodbyes. Just the rustle of bags and the quiet creak of suitcases over wooden floors. I watched from the window as they left. Aiden glanced up once, not to chase, not to plead. Just to see. I nodded. He nodded back. Not a goodbye. More like a thank you. Ryan and I spent the rest of the morning talking, not about us, or what came next, but about everything we used to forget to share, the dreams we let go of, the parts of ourselves we buried beneath what's practical. We didn't decide to stay together. We didn't decide to split. We decided to be honest, for the first time in a long time. And maybe that was enough. Because sometimes, you don't need to end with certainty. Sometimes, you just need to end with truth. The kind that lets you walk away, not with closure, but with clarity. And when I stepped outside again, the wind no longer felt like a question. It felt like an answer. Some stories aren't about who you end up with, they're about who you finally become.